So, good afternoon. This is a local Australian interview this week, and we have Adam Ramshaw of Genroe with us. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Good afternoon, Ray. Very well, thanks, mate. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm very good indeed. Perhaps you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and what Genroe is all about.
Well, essentially, Genroe started about 8 years ago, and our business started in customer consulting. So we were talking mostly around customer retention and customer cross-sell, those sorts of areas. And we spent quite some time helping organisations, large and small, doing that sort of customer retention, understanding what customer retention was about and making changes. But we've realised over the last couple of years that essentially what we're looking at is customer loyalty management, which is a larger but inclusive part of customer retention. So now we really focus on customer loyalty management. So we focus all the way from understanding what customers are telling us, so customer feedback, listening to customers, all the way through the process changes and actually making changes in the business. So what are the strategies for taking that information and turning it into customer retention processes? So that's what the company is. Consulting first, but we really pride ourselves on being quite practical consultants. So we're not the standard consultant where we sit around and provide reports. We really try and give very practical advice to our clients. So that's a bit about Genroe.
And yourself?
Yeah, myself, I've been in the business for quite some time now. I started out with Honeywell for a few years. Had a bit of a varied career. I started out in engineering, so I've got the numbers behind me. But I've also done marketing for quite some number of years, about 10 or 15 years now. So I've got a bit of both worlds, so I can talk to both sides of the conversation.
Both sides, indeed. So, yeah, I noticed from the website that you do focus on customer loyalty, which I suppose is a strong bit of the message. But where does that fit in with? We hear a lot of people speaking about customer experience and customer relationship management. What's your take on how these bits of the jigsaw fit together?
Well, I really see customer loyalty management as a larger emphasis than customer experience or CRM, for instance. Essentially, customer loyalty management talks about all of the parts of the pie that are going to be important to the customer. So they're, first of all, listening to the customer, understanding what they're saying. So that takes into account all of the sorts of things that you hear around voice of the customer feedback surveys, all those sorts of areas. But that information is only as interesting as things you can turn it into. So the customer experience part of the process is really all around the strategies and the things that you can do with that information. So how do we change our customer experience based on what the customers are telling us? And so those two areas put together really move into the next stage, which is execution and making changes in the business. So essentially, customer experience management is a subset of customer loyalty or customer loyalty management. If you've got a good customer experience, then you most likely have good customer loyalty. And in fact, a good customer experience is one that does generate good customer loyalty and for the right amount of money for the organisation. Because at the end of the day, it's all around making money. It's all around making profit for the organisation. So you need to balance the customer experience with the revenue and profit that customers bring in. So customer loyalty management talks about that side of it as well, not just around the experience per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Although I think the experienced people and the CRM people would probably claim that their concepts were fairly broad-ranging as well.
I think that's true, but I do think also the customer loyalty management talks about the bigger space, consciously talks about the bigger space. So it's not just around the experience, it's around the ROI of the experience, if you like. So I don't say they don't talk about that, but we consciously take a kind of broader view of the process.
Okay. And what about, how do you see customer engagement and employee engagement? I see a fair overlap between the two in the work that I've been doing, but how do you see that?
Yeah, customer engagement and employee engagement are two sides of the same coin, really. If you've got employees that are engaged and caring about the customers, then your customer engagement is going to be higher and your customer experience is going to be better. And then it's a flywheel. To quote a new NPS term that the guys over at Bain have started to talk about, which is the customer loyalty flywheel. So if you do a good job in the employee engagement, then you're more likely to build value for the customers are happy, employees like dealing with good customers, so employees are happier. So it's a virtuous circle, if you like, to build up. But yeah, they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Can't have a good customer experience with unhappy employees, that's for sure.
So if we had a CEO watching this interview and they were toying with the idea of becoming a bit more customer-centric as a business, what would the tips, where should he start, and at what point does he engage somebody like you, and how do you set the brief for somebody like you?
Well, essentially, if you want to become much more customer engaged, the first thing to think about is the profitability line. You really have to start the process from how we're going to make more money for the organisation through customer engagement and being more customer-centric. If you start through some sort of altruistic approach where we just want to do the right thing by our customers, it's bound to fail. It's absolutely bound to fail, because at the end of the day, organisations are around to generate profits for their shareholders. So you have to start with that focus right up front. I will say that the time to get us involved is near the start of the process, because building the governance process around becoming more customer-centric is the very first thing you need to do. To be successful, essentially an organisation has to have the support of senior management, and the CEO is a great place to start that process. From there, you have to build out the steering committees and processes to make sure that the organisation pulls together in the right way and starts to go about it in the right direction. I would suggest that organisations don't, for instance, just start to do a customer feedback program without any process or understanding about where that's going to fit in the organisation. You really need to be starting at the top and working out how the feedback's going to come back into the organisation, and what the teams, what the processes, and what the people are going to do with that information. I've seen lots of customer satisfaction survey processes, customer feedback processes, falter after a few years, because essentially the organisation gets a number and it becomes a number coming into the organisation, but not a driver of change. So my recommendation to senior management and to CEOs is to, first of all, think about the dollar impact of customer centricity. That's what it's all about, is making the organisation more profitable. And then think about how you're going to change the organisation based on the information that's coming in from customers. Because you need to have both sides of the equation if you're going to really make it work long term.
Mm-hmm. But if the business is new to customer centricity, how do you work out the ROI on work that you maybe don't specifically know about in advance?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's quite difficult up front to work out what the ROI of a particular, say, customer feedback program is going to be. You do have to start with a modicum of trust that it's a piece of infrastructure, a little bit like a telephone system or an accounting system, that it is a piece of infrastructure for the organisation and that it will generate value given the chance to do that. But day one, it is very difficult to work out what the value is. That's predominantly because you don't know when you start the process what the customer feedback is going to tell your organisation. You don't know the projects that you're going to be able to deliver based on that feedback. However, as soon as you do the customer feedback, as soon as you get that feedback coming back into the organisation, and you can identify which projects they are, then you can be rigorous. You can be rigorous around the project net present values. You can be rigorous around your ROI formulas. When it comes to taking action, that action must be very carefully managed and made sure that each project is a positive ROI in its own terms. But yeah, up front it can be quite difficult to do that. So initially you do have to take a little bit of it on faith, but there's plenty of proof out there that becoming more customer-centric generates more value for the organisation.
Okay, I think that's a great place to stop. What I'd like to do is perhaps the next interview to two things I'd like to speak to you about are the experiences you've had specifically in the market, and maybe a little bit of a reaction on what you think of the client-tier concept and what we're trying to do here at Client-tier Hub. So Adam, thanks very much for your time today, and we'll speak again soon.
Great, look forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot.